You think your stupid little podcast is going to change the world like hell it is.
But I believe
Your stupid little podcast
can save the world.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor McCoy. Welcome back to my stupid little podcast. Today we have Adam and Len on to discuss Magnifica Humanitas, the latest encyclical from Pope Leo. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, and then we can jump into things. Adam, go ahead. You're alphabetically first, so let's go for it.
All right, yeah. So I'm Adam, known on the internet as the Incarnational Inkwell. A little bit about me. I mostly do a mixture of blogging as well as video essays on various topics in literature, theology, philosophy, more so the literary angle, just trying to kind of combine and mesh the literary world with kind of the more theological, spiritual world to help Christians of all sorts dig into not just spiritual reading, but just good, solid classical reading as well, and hopefully that will enhance their own spiritual lives. So that's my MO, as it were.
All right. And Len, how about you?
So my name's Len, and I was part of my parish's religious education, and also I am a moderator over at the Libertarian Catholic Social.
Right. So for our visual watchers rather than simply listeners, you may be wondering why I'm overdressed. I just got home from a father-daughter dance with my daughters, so and I kept the suit and jacket on just for recording's sake. But a good time was had by all. But without too much further ado, let's start our talk about Magnifica Humanitas. So, what did you guys think overall? Do we have any general impressions of Pope Leo's first major work here as Pope? What do you guys think?
You know, just kind of getting the lay of the land here, having done a bit of a deep dive into the early chapters and then skimming the rest of it, I've been seeing a lot of reactionary content saying that the Pope is like basically going to war against AI. And while I can see that from a certain perspective, I feel like they're making it a false dichotomy between basically man and machine. That he's not as anti-technology as some people are painting the Pope to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the right parts or maybe the wrong parts of Twitter, or whatever, you would think that that Pope Leo has plagiarized large sections of industrial society and its future or whatever from Ted Kaczynski or something, which is not. It's not the case, right? He's absolutely measured, I would say, in his careful analysis of it's worth noting as well, not just AI, but a lot of the sort of new things of our sort of digital culture. And he's not being a Luddite here. So that's, I think, the first thing that we should probably dismiss out of hand is this idea that the Pope wants us to bomb data centers or something. No, we're not declaring a Butlerian jihad.
That sense at all, really, from it.
All right. So I'll contribute something a little bit off the wall and see what you guys think of this. I like his writing style. It's a radical departure from Pope Francis, and even to some extent from Popes Benedict and John Paul, because it strikes me at least as very academic. Like he is absolutely used to writing research papers and things like that, and it comes off that way with sermons sprinkled throughout. Because a lot of what I was reading, it was like, okay, well, this could absolutely just be a philosophical research paper. Oh, here's a homily. All right, back to another research paper kind of thing. And I like that. It mixed things up a lot. And it also had a lot of I found a great deal of careful precision. He had the habit of an academic writer to carefully define what he was talking about, explain his terms, to eliminate any possible confusions, except in a couple of little sections, which we'll maybe get to. Not maybe. Well, I'd
Yeah,
like you to. Yeah.
I got that same sense, especially with the precision. I think a large reason why he goes into so much of the history of Catholic social teaching is specifically in support of what you just said. So, like, I
Mhm.
think the reason why there's such a huge section of it that's devoted to that is because he's wanting to be really precise and to make sure everybody understands. Which, like you said, is going to be kind of a big departure from the previous Pope Francis on
Mhm.
that, who was kind of the opposite.
Yeah, and I mean, it's another instance where I think he's calling back to Leo the 13th. Because if you read Rerum Novarum, it works like that. Right? Rerum Novarum is very much um, it's very much an academic essay, in a sense, because it's formatted in that way, it's organized in that way, right, into essentially multiple sections that interrelate but don't just ramble between each other, in a way that what Leo the 14th here is doing is gradually building up and sort of laying some foundations, right? As I've got up on the screen over there. Right, first he starts by laying the foundations of what he's going to talk about. Then starts laying the foundations of what has come before. Here's what I'm talking about and what I'm going to be drawing upon through the social doctrine, or the Catholic social teaching, TM kind of thing. Um, the tradition since Rome Novarum. And I like that historical section. I was talking about this before we started recording, right? That historical section isn't just kind of a summary of here's what my predecessors have said, but rather he's making use of that section to say, here are the parts of this tradition that I'm going to be building upon specifically. And not just, here's what all of this is about in case you haven't read it. He's like, no, he's like a good professor, I guess. He's assuming you've done the reading and saying, here are the parts we're going to talk about. Which, by the way, I'm not doing. For the purpose of this podcast, I'm assuming that you, the viewer, have probably not read the whole thing, at least not yet. Though I encourage you to do so. It's good. It's well written. So we're gonna be kind of filling some of that in and giving some thoughts on the matter. And if need be, we'll go through. Like I said, I've got it up there for a reason in case we need to go look at quotes and context and that sort of thing.
I will say that I found it fascinating, just kind of his, like you said, the little overview of Catholic social teaching. I found it to be an interesting bridge, if you will,
Mhm.
between Catholic social teaching and just the Catholic view on science in general. Because if we think about artificial intelligence, like, it is technically like somewhat related to the field of science and just
Yeah.
technology as a tool. So it's interesting to see those two spheres of Catholic thought kind of overlap here.
Yeah, and I think that it's quite clear that he knows what he's talking about here, right? He's a PhD, I think, in mathematics, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. So he very clearly understands the at least to some extent the technology that we're talking about, more so than I do, certainly. I know that large language models work by uh, probability guessing something about words by reading the internet or something, and he clearly has a much better understanding than that, right? Which is tremendously useful. It speaks to the whole what we academically might call an interdisciplinary focus, that calls back certainly to things like some of the encyclicals by Pope John Paul II. Also emphasize this kind of dialogue between theologians and scientists and things like that. Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
I did get the sense that I think he's thought about this topic for quite a while, at least back to when, probably before we all kind of were aware of the whole new AI revolution.
Hmm. I mean, because it is a new thing, right? It every time I look back, for example, through like Facebook memories and things like that of say posts about or by AI from like 3 to 6, not even 6, like 3 to 4 years ago. Um, I'm struck by two things. One, how much it's advanced, but then also how long ago it kind of was in the grand scheme of things. Like I think of
Mhm.
LLMs and image generation and these sorts of things as like new. But realistically, ChatGPT launched in what 2022, something like that. Or like DALL-E Mini, if you remember that, the first image generation one. That was someone can feel free to correct me in the comments, but I think that was as long ago as like 21 or 22 or something like that. Right?
Yeah,
So it's been around a
it's
while.
somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's been around a while now. But at the same time, in the view of the church, 4 or 5 years is nothing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even like 20 years is nothing because he was also a lot of it is not just about AI. It's also about things like social media, things like the prevalence of the internet, the increasing spread of the internet to more parts of the globe, the interconnectivity of different parts of the world, and all that sort of thing that goes far beyond just the very very current AI revolution. Because all of these have yet to be seriously addressed by Catholic social teaching, by the magisterium. I really appreciate that he's going through and going what we might see as kind of going back to discuss issues that have been around for what we think of as a long while. So, let's go and get on through, shall we? Um, just to go through my notes, the introduction section is more or less what I would think. It goes through what he's planning to talk about and how he's planning to talk about it. And those two sections are what he's planning to talk about are what we see here, the res novae of our time, the new things. And how I think he's kind of explaining that is the things that have shown up since Centesimus Annus. Because that was the last major social encyclical um, by John Paul II. And given that was what 1980 something, right? Before I was born, that's there's been a lot of new things.
Yeah.
So like I
Mhm.
said, there's a lot he has to talk about, not just these radical new things in the past couple of years, this AI revolution. Um, so he's really the first pope to really address even the internet, at least to sort of integrate it into this body of social doctrine. And then how he's going to do it is this dichotomy of the two ways of building the Tower of Babel versus the rebuilding of Jerusalem. What do you think of his use of that? Did you think he was? I like how he uses it, but I was a little bit. I almost
I
wish he'd
thought
applied it more.
his Yeah, I can only see that. I thought his reference to the Tower of Babel was just chef's kiss right out of the gate. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that is a very excellent point to make, given the fact that like AI, not just like generation, but also like consumption. There
Mhm.
are so many people consuming AI generated content now that it's like we've all begun to basically speak the language of LLM,
Mhm.
even if we don't realize it.
Yeah.
And so his callback to the Tower of Babel was like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. If we all start speaking the same language and we all get the idea that, we can like create, which is in a sense true, but not within this particular realm of thought. It's just, yeah, it's a very sharp contrast, and I'm glad that he actually began with that
Mhm.
distinction.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, I think that is the metaphor that he uses more significantly and
Mhm.
more consistently. The rebuilding of the rebuilding of Jerusalem only comes up a few times as a sort of positive contrast. And I feel like that's maybe an artifact of that style I was talking about, where he's doing academic writing, academic writing, academic writing. Oh, and here's a homily, and then more academic writing. It's the oh, here's a homily is where he starts sort of tying things in with these biblical metaphors. And I feel like he maybe could have integrated that a little better. But that's, I guess, my grading hat coming on. But Who am I to grade the
Now,
Pope?
don't you be grading? I was gonna say, don't you be grading the Pope for his writing style, Professor?
I am, strictly speaking, academically a peer, and so peer review is an acceptable practice the world over. So there. Yeah. Anyway. It's not a rejection, it's a revise and resubmit. Sorry. I'm kidding, by the way. I'm not suggesting he revise and resubmit.
Professor, you have to realize that I have to cringe at that language because I got that same feedback from so many professors in grad school. They're
Look,
like, it's good, but can you just
anyone
tweak
who
it
has
just a little bit?
Anybody who's been in academia above the undergraduate level has gotten a revise and resubmit. Like it happens. Like it's not like not a disaster at all. It's not a rejection even.
Well,
it's a here, fix this.
I mean,
like, oh, okay. Then
yeah,
you fix it.
except when yes, except when in my case the fix it is just basically rewrite it so that I agree with it. That's
here, fix this. Pretend Augustine wasn't Christian. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, that's a separate.
Sorry to go down that. Yeah, so yes, I apologize for going down that rabbit hole.
I'm not going to give the Pope that feedback. Like, hey, stop referencing scripture in here. You're being too Christian. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, so this distinction, I think, it's something that he draws upon a lot, and I think that it could be more. I think that maybe we could expand upon it. Like, there's a couple of things that I would expand on. For example, like the difference between Adam, you mentioned this kind of common language, right? And that was the case, a kind of unity and diversity. That's the same kind of thing that we see both in the Tower of Babel and in the rebuilding of Jerusalem, just in radically different ways. And we see those same kinds of ways in the deployment of AI technology as well. Like on the one hand, on the negative end, you see people who are starting to write like ChatGPT, right? Like, I don't know if you see this, but I see this both online, in student papers, everything. Like, there are papers and posts and all sorts of things that I see that are probably not written by AI, but they have the same little inflections and vocal tics and grammatical absurdities and things that LLMs do. Just because people are interacting with it and it's sort of shaping how people talk about things.
And the scary thing, I mean, I'm glad you brought up language, like the use of language within AI, Professor, because the scary thing for me is that the more I've interacted with AI, the more its answers seem to take on like my manner of speaking, in a sense.
Yeah,
not necessarily my vocal tone, but just my phrasing and things, my word choice, and all those sorts of things.
I think we're discovering AI rampancy very rapidly. But the other aspect of this, right? I think the positive aspect of this that we can point to is things like real-time AI translation, right? Which we might think of as a kind of Tower of Babel motif, but the fact that I can, for example, go on Twitter and have a perfectly coherent back and forth conversation between myself, who, for the sake of this argument, let's say only speaks English because ancient languages don't count, and someone from Japan who only speaks Japanese, and someone from Russia who only speaks Russian, and someone from Germany who only speaks German, and we can all have a perfectly coherent conversation and understand each other more or less with nuance even. That's kind of a miracle, or kind of the height of human hubris. I don't know which. I lean towards the former, though. Right? I lean towards that being a genuine good.
I'm surprised there is a biblical allusion that I would have made in this opening section that I'm surprised the Pope didn't make.
Go on.
I'm surprised the Pope didn't mention anything about Pentecost and its use of language.
Yeah, because I think
that has commonly been seen throughout the Church Fathers as a reversal of the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that provides a good contrast point, right, to the Well, I don't know. We can certainly make an argument
I
that
yeah.
this is a kind of height of human hubris, us attempting to overcome these barriers that God has put down, but also it's a striving for genuine community, which is ultimately, like, metaphors aside, that is precisely the kind of thing that Pope Leo is saying that we ought to use these technologies for. And again, it has to be a kind of genuine, maybe organic community, rather than it being based upon some preordained or some artificially imposed or some authoritatively imposed set of guidelines, principles, and languages, or something like that.
Mm.
Which again, there's a threat of that. Right? That's that other side of the coin. Right? Everyone talking like ChatGPT, regardless of their actual language of origin. But if we can avoid that, if we can keep thinking, but use these technologies to help communicate those thoughts clearly to one another, I think that is a glorious application of this technology.
Would you mind scrolling back up to the title though, because there was something
Yeah.
about the subtitle that really intrigued me. Yeah,
On safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence.
Yes, that was especially intriguing to me, and the reason why is because it noted to me two things.
Mm-hmm.
In the time of artificial intelligence means that Pope Leo is acknowledging that basically the AI revolution is here, whether we want it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think he's echoing.
I think
he's echoing Leo the 13th there with the Industrial Revolution around Varum.
Mm-hmm. But he's also emphasizing, and especially the word choice of safeguarding the human person, not just kind of allowing AI to kind of be a companion alongside humanity, but safeguarding it in the sense of, like, we're the ones with dignity. AI has no God-given dignity because it doesn't possess,
where did I have this?
A metaphysical soul and such. But there's definitely more I want. There's definitely more I want to touch. I want to touch on that topic specifically. But
he definitely views AI as technology.
Yeah, distinctly from as person, right? I'm trying to remember where he actually addresses what is essentially the Chinese room problem without saying it in those terms. I don't know if I have it in my notes. Do I? No, I don't. Darn, I really should have written this down. If anyone knows where it is or can find it, feel free, and then we'll go to it. But when he talks about when he essentially talks about the impossibility of artificial intelligence being actually a person, being actually personal, that's funny enough. That's a piece of this that I've seen that has gotten more pushback than almost any other part of it. The other part that's gotten a lot of pushback has been on his stuff on Just War, but we can get that. We'll get to that.
Are either of you?
But
Are
go ahead.
Are either of you familiar with the work of the Benedictine monk Father Boniface Hicks, by chance?
Vaguely.
Because there's a quote of his. He was on Pints with Aquinas for an episode, and he made the comment.
I don't think I've read any of his work, but I'm sure I saw that.
Yeah, he made the comment that AI can do all of these wonderful things, but the one thing we definitely should not be doing with AI is basically trying to, quote unquote, like, trauma dump and try and treat it as like a psychologist or personal therapist, because due to the fact that it's AI, like, it can't understand human emotion to the same depth that we can. And it has me really concerned because there's an AI out right now called Ash that was specifically developed by Harvard psychologists in an attempt to use AI to better understand the human psyche. So it's basically an AI that's designed to be used by therapists.
Why would they name it
that? And that just kind of freaks me out. You name your AI Ash, and it's supposed to be this psychological therapist.
Spell that for me.
Chatbot.
How's it spelled?
ASH, Ash.
Oh, okay. It's not what I thought. I thought there was an E on the end for a minute because that's the name of a very, very famous psychiatrist or psychologist, research psychologist, whose first name escapes me. But he's famous for the Asch conformity experiments,
Mm-hmm.
which, like, it's people who do these sorts of things very often tell on themselves. I thought this might have been an instance of that. Right? It's like with Peter Thiel naming his AI nightmare Palantir. Right? It's things like that. Where so the Asch conformity experiments, if you're not familiar, and viewers may not be as well, I actually I do kind of use this as an example. I teach this in class a bit, especially if I'm talking about ethics and culpability. The experiment goes something like this. You give a survey question to a room full of people. There is an obviously correct answer. However, everyone in the room but one person is a Confederate in the experiment. You have the actual participant go last. You have everyone else answer first, and everyone else, or nearly everyone else, or whatever proportions that you fiddle with the data for, give the obviously wrong answer. And then you see if the actual participant is going to give the obviously correct answer or the answer that everybody or most everybody already gave.
And he winds up doing
What's that?
what everybody gave.
Yeah, like
And
almost
he winds up
invariably.
doing what everybody gave.
Yeah, if it's universal, if so, the main experiment that I've seen, the main version of it is you have a line, right, a line segment drawn, and then you have two other line segments drawn, and the question is which one is the same length as the sample one, A or B, and it's very obviously A, but everyone else answers B, even though it's like way longer or something like that. Right? And the what would you call it? The rate of giving the obviously wrong answer, in at least in that version of the experiment, is something like 80%. So
Cognitive, yeah, basically cognitive bias and social conditioning. They're powerful.
it was.
We saw that in COVID.
Oh yeah, of course we did. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know if you saw this, but my regular viewers may have seen one of my classes where I talk about the Milgram experiments, which I actually do bring up the Asch conformity studies in that lecture, where I spend a lot of the class talking about the Milgram experiments, which is the one where they had the experimenter basically increase the shock level until they effectively killed a guy in the other room, or thought they did, to see whether people would just sort of obey an authority figure in a lab coat. And the answer is unfortunately yes. People will definitely do that, and will just kill someone because the experiment requires you continue. That was the phrasing they used. And then, given that I was the time I recorded this, I was teaching this in fall, or no, when I recorded it was 2022 though. It was fall or spring. It was 2022. It was like right past the crest of COVID. I had to really point out to students like, hey, you did some really stupid things because people in lab coats told you to, didn't you? So did I. Like I was, I mean, as you know, probably, I was a vocal opponent of everything having to do with COVID, but there are things I just went along with because it was easier. I think there are things that we all went along with that we knew were ridiculous, but it was easier. So yeah, there are things that we can be compelled to do. Anyway, looping back to my point, this AI being called Ash, and it being a sort of a psychotherapy bot.
Yep.
It really makes me think that this is a sort of veiled reference, and that part of the point of this is for psychological manipulation on a mass level. Mostly just because I no longer trust people in the medical sciences.
I toyed around with Ash out of sheer morbid curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get I think I only got like 2 prompts in before I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. I need to be speaking to an actual human about these things. And I
Yeah.
mean, they were fairly benign. It's like, hey, I'm worried about this and blah blah blah. And they're like, oh, you want to tell me tell me more about that? And it was very much couch psychology.
Okay. Yeah. Which, I mean, that's the thing. It's part of what Pope Leo insists on is, Len, you said this, right? That it was that the insistence was that it's that AI and such are technologies and should be used as such rather than as something else, right? And I think part of what he was emphasizing there was that it's a tool and it isn't thinking. We're thinking with it helping. And that's how we have to keep thinking of it. Because if we start thinking of it as this other entity that we're interacting with, that's when we start to go way off the rails.
Yeah, there's some pretty wacky things already happening, like weird cult religions going on, and they're trying to summon like AI as a god or something like that.
I'm surprised he didn't bring that up. I know he did briefly mention people who were basically like falling in love with their AIs.
Speaking of, I was gonna say I keep getting these random Facebook ads for an AI called Roger. I don't know if either of you have run into those.
I don't think that one in particular.
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, so Roger AI is basically a dating sim AI. You create the most perfect significant other you can think of, and you can have daily chats with this AI that pretends to be your significant other, and you can
only $14.99 a month, right?
Yeah, it's just you can basically style them however you'd like, eye color, hair color, the whole bit, and they can have whatever personality you want them to have, and just pretend to be your AI significant other.
So it's porn, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like whether or not it's
pretty much porn.
Like whether it's sexually explicit or not, I think that qualifies as pornographic. And it serves exactly the same function, albeit without, well, maybe without, I hope without the fornicative aspect, let's say. But it serves exactly the same function. It is the replacement of a real human person with a simulacrum.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a sort of intimate and an emotional context. Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah.
And dangerous, right? I think that's psychologically and spiritually really dangerous.
I forget what study I remember hearing on the news. There's some study about, what was it, 60% of teenagers have confided in AI about personal problems.
So let me tell you a little counterexample story. So I grew up in the very early days of the internet. When I was this very small child, nobody had the internet. We were early adopters, so we had internet on our personal computer when I was like 6 or 7. So I was taught from a very early age from parents who were new to the internet because it was a new thing, how to be cautious about it. Right? And so I was always raised to treat any piece of information whatsoever that you put onto a networked device as if it were completely public. Right? That's how privacy was treated. Right? Online privacy, yeah, how you secure online activity is by not putting it anywhere near the internet. That's it. Right? You should assume, right, this is again my sort of assumption, how I was raised to think of these things, and it's kind of how I keep safe on the internet today, that if you put it anywhere near the internet, it's public. Everyone can and will find out about it, whoever wants to. So again, you can encrypt things as much as you want, which was something that really developed later. But the safest thing to do is to keep it on a piece of paper in your desk drawer, And so to oh gosh, what was it? Was it Elon Musk who tweeted about it's tax season, so why don't you use Grok to check your tax returns? And then somebody replied at Grok, "Is this a good idea?" And Grok replied, "No, definitely do not share personal information to an AI chatbot." And yeah, no, don't
That's
do that.
hilarious.
Absolutely do not confide um in an AI, partially because it's unsafe, right? Because, that information is now public. But then
Right.
also because you're once again treating this tool as if it's a person. Right? It's
And I
kind of the
mean,
weird inverse of lust in that sense.
there was a huge news story. I think it was about a 15-year-old who was depressed and like he wouldn't talk to his parents about it. He ended up confiding in this chatbot, and the more he got, basically, the stronger of a relationship he built with this chatbot, the chatbot convinced him to commit suicide, and the chatbot actually walked him through the best way to commit suicide.
Yeah. To be fair, there are humans that'll do that
I'll-
too, but they're mostly in Canada. So
I want to go back
Mhm.
where you mentioned that having this very intimate relationship with these with AI and chatbots
Mhm.
is spiritually dangerous. I think it's actually just kind of physically dangerous for humanity in the sense that I don't know if I don't know if you already knew about this, but like the whole sort of population crisis that a lot of places are coming up against, and I think it's just going to exacerbate that if people keep going down that road and they're just no longer finding intimate relationships with real humans and procreating. They're just you know they're just finding that in these chatbots, and it kind of plays into kind of hopefully it is like mission for this to be like a protection of human dignity. I think that's another aspect of that kind of plays into it.
Yeah. I mean, I made the comparison to pornography already. I mean, it has so many of the same psychological and interpersonal pitfalls. I mean, it has the customizability and availability problem, right? That will never, almost by definition, compare to a real person. Because if you get used to a chatbot that is always perfect for you and only you, all of the time, any real person is never going to measure up to that. And that is setting a grotesque standard for how we interact with other people. And I think it's putting it in psychological terms. I think it and maybe spin off of this if you want, but it's kind of training people to be more agreeable by mimicking the AI, because the AI is nothing but agreeable, while also having less and less of a tolerance for other people being disagreeable. And then, of course, people are going to be, right? Because people are people.
Okay.
Right.
Hey
So,
Vincent, do you know how to add Philip to this?
yeah, maybe. So, everyone, let's welcome Philip Herot, who has been a guest of the channel before. I've been a guest on his channel as well for a couple of things. Um, give yourself a brief introduction, and then we'll jump back into the discussion, shall we?
Yeah. I'm some dude with a camera. Nothing special.
Aren't we
A
all?
banker who likes to talk about theology and politics.
Yeah, that's we're all something like that, aren't we? By the way, this actually does tie into things, and I do want to get back to the anecdote that you were going to bring up, Adam. But this is something that I think that that is mentioned, that he kind of does talk about, the capacity for more people to participate in conversations, right, in important conversations, and that kind of leads to a broader base of intellectual discussion, let's say, and then also just community, right? Because the four of us are not exactly in a social position to hang out and talk about these things, particularly not in front of an audience, um except for this, right? And I think that kind of thing is, on net at least, tremendously beneficial. there are pitfalls, of course, because there are also crazy people, the bad kind, who suddenly have an audience. But these kinds of conversations can happen. And I think that is part of that sort of genuine development of worldwide community that Pope Leo is praising in terms of the new things. So we were just, of course, talking about some of the dangers of, let's say, treating AI as if it's a person. And some of the instances that we see of that. So, Adam, you were about to give us a
Yes,
little anecdote about this. Yeah.
Yes, I have another anecdote. I came across an a what was it? Was it a video? Yes, I believe it was a news story I caught a couple months ago. There was a developer working for ChatGPT
Mhm.
who basically trained the model to act as to basically become his girlfriend, and he chatted with it so much that its memory got full, and the memory got so full that it deleted all the memory and essentially broke up with him, i.e., like forgot everything about their conversations because its memory was too full. And the man was just apparently heartbroken that ChatGPT would do this, basically dump all of its memory and just completely forget about the quote unquote relationship they had formed.
I saw that story as well.
There need to be a
Like that.
lot more scare quotes in there rather than just relationship, because any verb in the active mood needs scare quotes around it, and then remember especially is another one. Like, it's just like we were saying, like, and just like His Holiness was saying, that I think the big problem is thinking of these things as if they're another thing that we're talking to, rather than as a tool. Because as a tool, they can be tremendously useful, but as a
They're
person,
really
they're
good
dangerous.
search engine.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I use AI assisted searches. Like, a lot of people complain about that, and I don't know why. A lot of people complain that, oh, I don't want my search engine to have an AI summary at the beginning. You just need a good one. Like, sure, we all can acknowledge Google's AI summaries are awful, but they're not all awful. Like, Brave does a great job. Its integrated AI search, AI summary search thing is fantastic. I have not had to read through a life story for a recipe in a long time, because I can just type in such and such recipe, and then I will get an actually useful, very concise recipe that Brave will give me from several websites compiled together. That's a great use. That's a fantastic use, because I don't need to read, whoever you are, whatever blog it is, your life story to figure out how to make banana pudding or something.
Right.
But things like that. Like, again, but I'm not under the impression that there's a little man in my computer that reads these recipes and gives me a good version of it, or even knows what a good version of, say, banana pudding or whatever is. No, I know it's a summary. I know it's just a search engine. Like, it's no different from Google was 10 years ago, but it's still tremendously useful, right? And again, that's an important distinction to make, and it's one that His Holiness insists upon for good reason.
Speaking of treating AI as a person, this is kind of my personal bias after interacting with a few different AI chatbots. I find Gemini's voice mode to be very off-putting. It's one thing if I'm doing research for a writing project and I'm just asking it questions to help me brainstorm, but it's another thing if I turn on voice mode and I actually try and have a conversation with this thing, and it's becoming much more conversational about where do you want to go after this question, and blah blah blah, just trying to keep the conversation going. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not having a conversation with this thing. I'm just trying to get information.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I have yet to. I don't think I've ever used a voice mode on any AI search and any AI tool. Just for that reason,
Well,
it's off-putting.
Yes.
I use a series voice, and back in the day, this was like 2016 series, and I do like having I'm a big TTS guy, so I do have ChatGPT occasionally read me the results that I get from it, but I'm not something to this.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a use case for it, but still, I think that there's a good argument to be made that it's unsettling, and lends itself to seeing the AI in the wrong way. And I mean, it's
Sure.
we are socially, right, culturally
Mhm.
primed so thoroughly to think of robots as people. From every source of science fiction that has come out in the last 100 years or more, we're so primed to think of the cute little robots as if they were little people. But they're toasters, okay? And if you continue to think of them as toasters, they can be very good toasters.
Mm-hmm.
But don't make
Sorry,
friends
Data.
with them.
Exactly. And whatever you do, don't.
Don't
The
give it a
other thing that
gun.
irks me about, yeah, the other thing that irks me about kind of the personalism of AI are these videos that I've been seeing of just popular figures. Let's say videos of popular figures that are clearly AI generated. There were a bunch of them going around, AI generated videos of Bishop Barron and Father Mike telling people to do all these outlandish things, and it's like, no, you don't need to put you don't need to put salt in your toilet just to fix a clogging problem just because Father Mike said so, for example. It's just like,
I feel like this is just the AI version of those horrific YouTube videos that were ostensibly made for children using like children's characters, but were
yep.
made deliberately bizarre and horrific. I feel like it's the
Yeah,
same impulse, just to twist things
just
so that they will be twisted.
yes, they're basically YouTube poop 2.0 in a sense.
Which, okay, fine if it's labeled as such and it's for comedy's sake. I have no problem with that. It's like, okay, it's the same thing I thought of. So when we're all old enough to remember when Autotune first came out, right? The
Yeah.
audience may not be, but there was a time when Autotune did not exist. Shock horror, I know. But it came out and there were two major use cases. One was pop songs, and I despised it from the beginning.
yes.
Still do. The other use case for it, initially at least, was to turn things into songs that were never musical to start with. If you remember these, this was when like you would take a speech from Barack Obama and turn it into a song.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
remember these?
Oh my.
These were delightful. But they were
Yes, I remember.
they were not deceptive.
Yes, I remember
Go back
someone.
and look.
Yeah, Phil, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say.
I still listen to Roy's Good Looks High Ground song with Anakin. I have the high ground. I have the high. Great song.
Yeah.
I remember someone turned a debate. Someone turned a 2016 debate between Clinton and Trump into a song, and it was just hilarious.
One of my favorites
was
so
good.
One of my favorites was the Churchill speech, the famous "This is our island" Churchill speech. Somebody made that into a song. It was good, but it also, like, no one would have ever thought that he was actually like, oh yes, Winston Churchill sung the song. Like, there was no deception involved or intended. That's a great, perfectly fine use case for silly AI videos now. Totally fine with it. I think that's great. It's like those Deuterocomical. It's a great YouTube channel. He does AI voice. Yes, fantastic. Does AI voice?
I love Deuterocomical.
Stuff. Yeah, he does AI voice stuff of Catholic online personalities, just like you're saying, of like Bishop Barron or Father Mike or whoever saying bizarre and outlandish things, but it's very obviously for comedy's sake, right? It's parody.
Yep, it's very obviously satire. It's hilarious. Trent Horn going on in Pints with Aquinas to debate whether, like a hot dog is a sandwich. It's like, what?
Yeah, things like this, or Matt Fradd's holiday parties. Those are always fun.
The yearly.
Sorry, go ahead. Missed that.
The yearly Matt Fradd holiday parties.
Yes.
Yeah, General Marshall and Gordon there for Christmas or whatever.
Yeah, that's always a good time. Always fun. But again, no one thinks that this actually happened. It's not deceptive. It's not trying to be real. It's trying to be funny, right? And I think again that is a perfectly reasonable and perfectly permissible use for these sorts of things. In fact, to go a little bit of a deep dive here into my intellectual wheelhouse, Duns Scotus, the late 13th century Franciscan philosopher, theologian, blessed Duns Scotus, I should say, the known defender of the Immaculate Conception, also had an argument about when it is appropriate to lie. And he used as his example Joseph from the Old Testament, who lied to his brothers into thinking that they were about to be eaten by lions because it was funny. And they learned a lesson from it in the end. And then it's okay to lie. Essentially, his argument is, if the people lied to will eventually know the truth, and upon learning the truth, will see the humor in the lie. Which just makes me think that Scotus would have loved these silly YouTube poops and things like that. I mean, he was very Franciscan. Very Franciscan.
I remember a NLT translation of the Book of Proverbs warning against lying. Now I'm trying to think of that verse appears in other translations. I think it does, but it's worded differently. But there is a verse in Proverbs that warns against lying and then saying afterwards, "I was only joking." And my first read for the Bible was NLT, so I remember it that way. I was determining the translation, so yeah, endorsement anyway. But I don't have access to my computer right on the side, but I think if someone does have a computer, it says a fool will lie to his friend and say, "I was only joking." So I would challenge them. I know Scotus is, he's a blessed, so with all due respect and whatnot. But I
will
think
say
that the scripture seems to. I think that now it's a debatable topic. When one can lie is a debatable topic, if one can lie at all.
Yeah, but, I will say that it's that reading of Genesis. It was Genesis, right? Or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That reading of Genesis is really controversial, and not a lot of people agree with that reading of Scotus either. There are plenty of Scotists, people who study Scotus, who don't think that that's exactly what he was trying to say. That it's okay if it's funny, but rather that it's okay if everyone knows that it's a deception. Right? You can lie so long as everyone's in on the joke.
Well, and then that would be
that's like telling fiction.
It's not really a lie in the sense of it's telling a fictional story is not lying. If you're reading fiction, right. It's fiction.
If I say in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, right? I'm not lying, right?
Right.
Anyway, again, we digress.
Of course, the aliens from Galaxy Quest might disagree.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's we're gonna get on a wild tangent if we go that direction. Interesting one, maybe for another time. So okay, couple things I want to bring up. Okay, so I've got in my notes when he talks about in a few different places, but first of all in paragraph 25 for those following along. This idea that it pops up here and then it gets repeated several times. This idea that information is a good to be shared, and it is uniquely a good to be shared, and that is how the universal destination of goods applies to information. Is that the good of information is it has a universal destination rather than having a particular concrete destination.
So you're saying we should have copyright laws that prohibit us from copying other people's ideas and writing them, Is that what we're saying?
I see where you're going with this. I think
we're endorsing.
I think that my thesis that copyright or IP protections qualify as usury is starting to get some serious papal support.
Yes.
So to briefly argue this, right? Briefly, because I actually haven't gone into this in any detail in any formal way. Springboarding off of what His Holiness has to say here, right? The idea is that information is by definition non-scarce. Right? It is infinitely replicable at no cost. Again, by definition, if the information is there, it can be copied at no cost to the one being copied from. Let's say, it might have a cost imposed by the copier. Right? So, for example, I need hard drive space in order to download. Right? Something like that. But that's a cost imposed on me, not upon the Vatican website. So, what we a functional definition of usury that he actually applies to, in a few places here, is the deriving wealth or extracting wealth from no contribution, right? Or no generation of value. And so what you're doing is imposing artificial scarcity upon information by keeping it, by holding it, rather than allowing it to be shared, not even sharing it, but allowing it to be shared. What you're doing is you're setting up an artificial barrier and charging money, typically, or maybe even just not letting it happen, but typically charging money for someone to vault that barrier that you've put up. Right? And so what we have is a case where this good, right, is truly I hate to use the term because it has a lot of baggage, but a public good. Right? It's one which is by nature non-scarce and therefore shareable. Right? And so to limit the share of information, to silo off, to use the term that Pope Leo uses quite a bit, to silo off this data and prevent it from being shared and being used more universally, is essentially a form of usury. There is a brief sketch of my argument for the matter. What do you think? I've never liked IP, not just because I like to pirate things, but because I think that it's built upon a fundamental misunderstanding of property rights. What you can have,
So
what you can have as property.
this does actually kind of beg some questions, I guess, as far as how far that goes, because there's obviously going to be secrets about, like, maybe you don't want everything about your medical history being exposed. So there's something like that. You can obviously keep secrets. So secrets that you can have that only you know, or you and your wife know, that you don't want to share with other people.
But I think the question then,
obviously,
the question I think that Pope Leo would ask is, can I sell them?
Yeah.
And then what's the difference?
Well, and there's something too, is as someone who is a really good public speaker and might tell stories about their life on YouTube to make a living, they're selling information about their life. So again, is there I wonder how far that goes. I haven't read the document. Full disclosure, I have not read anything from the Humanitas, and other things that. But like, just going off your summary just now, I don't know if he pushes that. I mean, obviously,
hold on, you're cutting out a little bit.
Public.
Go back a little bit.
Obviously, I haven't read the document, but your summary of it, basically your summary of it, I'd want to know how far he's considering all information public good, and I'd want to know, how far selling information is prohibited, because it seems to me, we're not doing it right now, but if we were to monetize our YouTube channels and make money on that, are we selling information?
I am monetized, by the way, so become a YouTube member. I have memberships and stuff, so do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're selling information, so I mean,
no. Okay, so there's actually there's a medieval distinction to be made here, right? And this is from Scotus Eriugena, I think. Maybe I could be way off on that. I'm trying to remember, but somebody there was a medieval philosopher who made the distinction between charging for one's time and service versus charging for information itself. and that there's a crucial distinction there. That the information, if you are charging for, but okay, take for example the difference between me charging to read you a book versus me charging you to allow you to read it.
Fair enough. Okay.
I think that is maybe the crucial distinction, or a crucial distinction. There's maybe more. There's maybe more lines we can draw. That's at least one of them.
So the classic detective who asks the homeless guy on the street, have you seen such and such person around here? He says, I don't know. He says, well, how about if I give you a George Washington? Have you seen him now? It's like, yeah, I've seen him around. He comes every Thursday. Is that usury?
I can make two arguments to the contrary. See what you think of them. I'm not convinced entirely by either one, but let's see. On the one hand, we can say that it is not the information that he's selling, strictly speaking. It is sharing the information that he's selling, because it does require some effort on his part to actually give up the information, right? It's not like the information is there on the wall and he is, blocking it until he is paid to move or something like that, right? Or something. Not a perfect analogy, but something like that, right? So you can say that, right? Or the other way is maybe the cop just owes the homeless guy some money anyway. One, for his help. Two, because out of charity, right? Maybe the cop should help him, and then out of gratitude, the homeless guy will help in return, right? And so there maybe this exchange should happen. It just should happen a little bit differently. And I think again that's maybe a case that we can make. There's maybe two arguments for why that's perfectly fine. Of course, the other argument is no, that's not okay. But why would we expect? Why would we expect either person in this scenario to be perfectly respectful of property rights? Homeless drug addicts on the one hand, and police detectives on the other hand, are not the most respectful of property rights in our society, typically. So maybe this is just an untoward, underhanded interaction in the first place. There's three approaches.
You can replace the homeless guy with the guy at the bar, and the bartender,
Fair enough.
Or
cashier. No, maybe the bartender says, I don't talk.
Detective might be a private detective too.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, there we go. It's a private detective, and the bartender says, well, you got to order something before I'll start talking to you. And then, if the guy buys a whiskey, then he'll start chatting or something. Okay, fine. Maybe what he's doing there is it's a change in the kind of relationship from detective and witness to customer and bartender. Maybe they have a different kind of interaction there because of the exchange of goods and services for money or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you can make an argument for it. Or again, maybe it's just a kind of underhanded sort of exchange. Maybe it's not perfectly ethical. Maybe we shouldn't expect it to be.
Seems to me that I do not have an obligation to speak.
Yeah.
Like now, if obviously you do not withhold good when is your power to do so, that's biblical. So there's that. But just thinking this through, if we're not trying to solve a problem, and someone just wants to know something, I'm not obliged to tell them. So let's make it directions instead. How do I get to the library? It's like, I don't know. How much money are you going to have? Everything's kind of shady. It's kind of, hypothetically speaking, I'm not obliged to give someone directions, simple service and giving them directions. I'm allowed to charge for that. Seems
okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Because again, I think that the distinction, the primary and probably the correct distinction to make, is that it requires effort on the part of the giver. Right. Whereas if I have a website and it has, say, my podcast on it, there we go. It requires no effort on my part, whether that is effort in terms of me actual inputs or even cost, for that to be available to other people. Right. And certainly not the cost that $2.99 per download or whatever would be. right? Fine, maybe we can say server space or something like that, and fine, maybe there's some cost associated with that, but it's minuscule. It's not $2.99 per download or whatever. So if I were to attempt to charge that, assuming I could, I would be charging for something that is already produced and already available. And that's different, say, from saying it's for example, it's the difference between commissioning someone to make a work of art. It's perfectly reasonable and perfectly good, right? I can say, hey, I will give you X amount of money if you will paint or draw this for me. Okay? Versus you have painted or drawn something and I want to copy it. And it's on the wall, and I have my easel and paints here and the artistic talent to do so. It's weird to say that I have to pay you to look at it, but only if I look at it in such a way as I'm doing so in order to make my own copy, right?
Yeah, no,
We're getting into the
let's
weeds
use
on
the
IP stuff here, I guess, but
yeah, it's relevant though. It's just,
yeah,
especially for a libertarian podcast. I feel like that's
true.
At least I'm assuming it's kind of your cup of tea.
Partially,
My
yeah.
channel is more theological, but we do kind of count some libertarianism.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that I can't charge per download of my podcast. I mean, it seems to me I can. I just can't stop you from giving away for free once you've done so. I mean,
Yeah,
I have
I
every
think that's
right to
fair.
say if you want to download from my source, I'm going to charge.
Yeah, maybe
that's fair. I can fine get it from Len. He already bought it. I can't stop you. I also can't tell you to Len. I don't have to tell you to Len. But like, it seems to me that again, I'm hosting it. I have every right to charge for it. Or someone is hosting it for me and says I can charge for it.
Yeah, and maybe what you're charging for there is the hosting, right, and the download and that sort of thing, rather than the
even if it
information
costs
itself.
me nothing,
Yeah.
even if it costs me nothing, I don't see that as a violation. Now, are we arguing that something should be legal? Because I'm talking legal right now, whereas Pope Leo in this may be talking, and I'm not trying to disagree with the Pope. I'm talking for some
Yeah, and he isn't.
But
at least in this case, is not making that careful distinction between ethics broadly speaking and legal restrictions. Right.
And something can be ethically, something can be legitimately. It's allowed to be legal, but it's not moral.
Right.
I mean, I think we all agree that not everything that's immoral should be illegal.
Right. Even usury.
So perhaps you shouldn't charge for it, but it shouldn't be illegal to charge for it. Maybe the best way to lead
I think that's probably a line to. I think that's probably a good line to draw. Another line to draw. We can make a lot of distinctions here because this is a very complex topic.
I know a lot of the Mises Institute. If you go to the Mises Institute books, I mean, you can get them all from Amazon and pay $20 for the book. You can get the audio books on Audible for $15 a month. Or if you go to the Mises Institute actual website, most of the books are there for free.
Yeah.
So it's like it's almost like at that point it's a donation. If I want to donate, I can, or I can get it for free. And that might be the way too. It's like, a podcast $2 an episode, but also, if you just want to get it for free, it's fine too. Through this other website I have here or whatever.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's more to talk about in terms of IP, but I think I'll say we've certainly exhausted what Pope Leo has said in this document, because this is only a slight allusion to the idea that information exists to be shared. Right, and that's really the limit to which he goes into this. It's the main place where he talks about it is right here on paragraph 25. There's a couple of other parts where he mentions it again, but that's the main part of it. Another aspect of
that was two in the weeds. Two in the weeds there.
No, it's a springboard off of what he's talking about, and I did start it, to be fair, because this is a topic that I've found very interesting for quite some time. It's just that I'm getting a little bit of magisterial support here, which I don't know if I expected.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I really wanted to bring up was his section on the common good, which is somewhere around 60, if I remember right. Yeah, here we go, 59. Starting on 59. The first thing he outlines in the Principles of Social Doctrine, and I will say where my criticisms show up are right here. Because sure, I've mentioned that I have some criticisms of in general of the things that he brings up and the extent to which he says them, but here's where I actually have, content criticisms, because I think that this section is uncharacteristically vague and in some cases contradictory in a way that the rest of Pope Leo's writing is not. And I kind of have to blame the topic for that subject matter, because the topic of the common good is always really vague, and it is never quite a clear and coherent concept. A Thomist, a very well respected Thomist, I know. No isn't right. Associate with professionally on rare occasion. Let's put it that way. Has said several times that they are not clear at all on what Thomas Aquinas means by the common good, because he uses it in radically different ways to make radically different points at all sorts of different places. So it's not clear that it's a coherent concept or a single concept. And that's been my experience. And it unfortunately remains my experience. I actually had some hope that Pope Leo would be consistent and coherent enough to actually give a nice, concise definition of the common good, but he does not do that. What do you guys think of this? You have read this part?
I think to your immediate point, Professor, the phrase "the common good" being so vague is also why you've got folks like atheists chanting, for the common good as they promote their secularism too. So there's that to consider as well.
You cut out there, Phil.
So for many, the common good is just ends justify the means.
Yeah, and well, to be fair, he's very clear that that's not what he means. Right? He rules that.
I don't think that's what he meant. It's just I hear that even from many distributists. When I hear them use the term "common good," they're really just kind of meaning that ends justify the means. They're using the receptor in the sense that it's a kind of collectivist mentality is how they're using it. We mentioned this on the chat beforehand. I've read through the Catechism a couple of times now, and at least 3 times. I think at least twice. I think maybe 3 times I read through the Catechism now. And I've taken the portions from the common good and put them all together, because he talks about the common good at different times all throughout. I noticed myself reading the Catechism that it was very almost contradictory, but I did take my own reconciliation of it. And at the time when I converted right for the first time, I was trying to reconcile all of it and was able to find a happy reconciliation of the different senses it was used with the Catechism that lined up with a inviolable property right, which the Church seems to teach.
It definitely does. Rerum Novarum is pretty explicit that property rights are inviolable.
As is the Catechism of Trent, which is debatable whether that's magisterial, but the Catechism of Trent also does affirm property rights are inviolable in the section on the commandments against stealing.
And I'll say, again, this is unfortunate because it's all in this section. All of the problems are either in this section or stem from this section. And I think it's my speculation here, and maybe this is uncharitable, but grain of salt. My speculation here is that he knew he had to include a section on the common good because it's in every social encyclical. He had to talk about it. So it was kind of it feels like it was obligatory rather than it being actually useful.
How long is this section?
It's not long. It's like 4 paragraphs. 5 paragraphs.
Can you read it for us so we can better comment on it? Is that or too long?
Yeah, I'll read it. I'll skip a little bit, but let's go through it. So, okay. Recognizing that every man and woman possesses an inalienable dignity, together with rights that no human power can betray or nullify, requires us to shape the way we live together, including our economic and political choices and the makeup of our cities. From this arises the first major principle of social doctrine I wish to highlight, the common good. We can describe it as the social expression of the dignity recognized in every person. I'm going to skip a little bit because the next section is not providing a definition, it is providing examples. It's
There's
doing
an
that
important
thing.
point there he just made, though. I want to hold on to that what you just said there. But yeah, go on.
Well, let's pick it apart bit by bit as we go. Go ahead.
So I know one of the things a lot of people pointed out was that he says in this encyclical that the church has never affirmed the inviolability of property rights, which
Hold on.
is historically incorrect.
He also says that the church did affirm the inviolability of property rights. He says both.
Does he?
Yes.
Interesting.
In different sections.
And my thinking is he probably means it in a different sense, because I think there is a sense in which the inviolability of property rights is not true. I think that depending on what you mean by the inviolability of property rights, I can't affirm it if you mean certain senses of the term. For example, if you're pointing a gun at me, I have every right to seize the gun from you. So in self-defense. So there are senses of the term inviolability of property rights that even I would affirm as an absolutist that it's not.
Right. There's also another sense, which is even more broad, which is that I have a right. I have my property, and I have a right to dispose of it as I wish. But there are certain ways of disposing of that property or using that property or whatever that are good, and certain ways that are bad. But both of which are, strictly speaking, my right, in the sense that it would be unjust to interfere with it. Right.
Yeah.
So I can use my property incorrectly.
He says that paragraph that what we just read was that no human or human institution, the exact wording was, can violate. It's inviolable for human. That would also leave it open to God being able to it's inviolable before men, but not before God. Excuse me. In that sense, I would say, it's obviously property rights are not inviolable before God. We don't have any rights before God as far as God has every right to take our stuff and our life if he wants to.
That's a point that I've always clung to regarding inviolability of property rights, and in respect to like the universal destination of goods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So continuing on a bit.
Can we define the universal destination for the purpose of the stream? Can we define the universal destination of goods?
I forget if he talks about it in this section or elsewhere, but briefly that it has two aspects of it: a broad sense and a narrow sense. The broad sense is that goods, that is possessions, property, whatever, are rightly ordered towards certain ends, and that's the really broad sense. That is to say, there's a right way and a wrong way for me to use my property, and that should be for the benefit of for the common good, broadly speaking. Right. Maybe that's a little circular, but that aside.
Which Locke, I'm not sure how early this comes, but I know Locke in his two treatises makes an extensive case that because the earth was given to all mankind in as a whole, the earth is for all mankind as a whole, and therefore, it always kind of reverts back to, that it is for all of our benefit. But it doesn't mean we don't have property rights, as he argues extensively within his two treatises as well. And that has been sanctified by virtue of Leo taking Locke and basically plagiarizing him into the exterior. The 13th.
So the narrower version of the universal destination of goods, which I think we mostly get in Quadragesimo Anno, correctly, is this idea that that what we have, the excess of what we own, does not belong to us, but rather belongs to the poor. And that, which we've talked about this before as well, that this finds its roots in some of the church fathers, in some sense. Of course, we kind of question that a little bit, and we challenged that in a previous podcast or previous discussion. So check that out.
St. John Chrysostom.
Oh yeah, Chrysostom. That's it. Yep. Thank you. But in any case, right, that's the other version of this. And if that quite frankly falls apart quickly as soon as you ask specific questions about what specifically belongs to whom. Right? For example, I have more bow ties than some people. Which of those belongs to which poor person?
I think the blue one belongs to me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I can use
specifically.
more bow ties too, as long as you're giving them away.
See, there's the thing. I mean, maybe I have a moral obligation to specifically give this bow tie in particular to some specific person, but it doesn't seem like that's discernible a priori.
My address.
Yeah, that's certainly not discernible a priori. I don't think. Right. I at least need to consult you, right, on which one you might like. In any case, so he continues, and we actually get something like a definition of the common good that he goes on to contradict later. He says, the Second Vatican Council affirmed that the common good consists in, quote, the sum total of social conditions that allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. This definition provides us with a valuable initial reference point, because the common good cannot be reduced to a mere list of conditions or institutions. Am I wrong that that's contradictory?
Where do you see the contradiction?
That it is a list, a sum total of social conditions, but it cannot be reduced to a mere list of conditions. Is that not?
You're reading a little fast. Did he say it's a sum total? And then at the
quote,
end say it's not?
So this is him quoting the Second Vatican Council from what? Okay. Gaudium et Spes. Okay. Quoting Gaudium et Spes. The sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. Now, Leo's statement is, he continues, this definition provides us with a valuable initial reference point because the common good cannot be reduced to a mere list of conditions or institutions. So, Gaudium et Spes says that it is the sum total of social conditions, which yada yada, and Pope Leo says it cannot be reduced to a mere list of conditions or institutions.
Yeah, it definitely sounds contradictory on its face. I'd like to read the actual text. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me to read.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's on screen, but might be presumably a little bit hard to read, especially on mobile.
It's
right?
not on my screen.
Gotcha.
Not readable on my screen. Sorry,
right.
I'm on my phone.
Yeah, it's this is I'm reading from paragraph 60. Those you following along or for later reference. Again, this is the kind of problem that I find so often in discussions of the common good, that it winds up being this contradictory mess. Because it's this, okay, that definition from Gaudium et Spes, if that were universally accepted as the definition of the common good, I can totally work with that. That works wonderfully, right? That's something that we can discuss.
Jump back in real quick. So I'm looking at that. I was able to launch it here. So paragraph 60, the Second Vatican Council affirmed that the common good consists in. So consists in the sum total of social conditions not able to. So it consists in maybe a qualifier that helps make this not a. It consists in, but is not comprehensively in this. Like, so
yeah, maybe.
Could it be saying
more to
these things, the sum total of social conditions not able to be, it is part, the common good consists in that, but is not fully, that does not fully encompass it all.
Maybe.
That to me is a plausible reading.
Okay.
I want to be as charitable as possible.
Right. Now, the problem I find there, though,
contradiction.
I think you're probably, that might be right, and that is kind of the best reading, I think, here. That he's saying, well, it goes beyond just this that we're talking about. The problem is that just this, the definition from Gaudium et Spes, is actually quite useful. right? Because it's what that's talking about is the set of preconditions for justice, for social cohesion, for flourishing, for the attainment of virtue, for salvation, essentially, right? What does a society need? How does a society need to be set up in order for people to flourish? So it's things like, well, frankly, property norms, a basic enforcement of justice, um, uh, methods of settling disputes, right? All of these things that we think of as as functioning social institutions. If that's what we mean by the common good, then yeah, I can totally work with that, and that's actually worth discussing. But so often do we people discussing the common good, and I find this especially among distributists, but not exclusively. They will start with that, and when I say, okay, cool, so that includes inviolable property rights, right? And so therefore, like the state is impermissible, right? And so they're like, no. We need more than that. That's not just that's not just what the common good means. It means more than that. It also includes other things, like, and then they just start yammering. Not to say that Pope Leo starts yammering here, but that's a common instance of what I find.
He clarifies further after the citation 76. This definition provides a valuable initial reference point because the common good cannot be reduced to a mere list. You read that already, but then because it is not the sum total of individual benefits. So he's saying condition, it's the sum total of social conditions, but not the sum total of individual benefits, nor the so for example, way you might define that is there is a case where maybe you should give your bow tie away to someone, and this definition doesn't tell you what that is, but it does kind of set the conditions up. And I think that's what he's getting at. And I can give an example. Let's say you and I both go to some kind of public speaking arrangement where I was under the understanding that we didn't wear ties, and we get there and it's bow tie only access, and you happen to have a spare one in your pocket. I mean, that would probably be a good situation to give me your spare bow tie. But that obviously can't be summarized in the sum total social conditions. He's saying that I think what he's getting at here, if I can just try to make interpretation on a whim here, is that this is a broad understanding of what the social good, what the common good is in a definitional sense, but cannot possibly encompass all the individuals' applications of it. Is what he's trying to say, I think.
Yeah, I think that. There we go. Sorry, I messed with my view a little bit. I think that you're right, but that isn't what the common good is. Right?
Well,
that is a good that is something that it would be good for me to do for you, right?
Let me change the scenario then. Let's say that I am. Let's say I have two full meals, and I see a homeless person that does not have any food and needs a meal. In that situation, I'd give them a second meal. Would be the good thing to do. All things being equal, and so but the definition of the common good can't define it. You can't have a summary of what the common good is or definition of the common good is that defines every single instance of when and where you should give something to someone. And I think that's what he's getting at. It's like when Protestants use the argument. Scripture is God breathed and capable of informing the man of God for every good work. And every good work has to be in Scripture. If it's not Scripture, it's not a good work.
Right.
And so, what he's saying is that you can't possibly summarize every instance where giving something away would be a common good. He seems to be getting at that you can't. There's too many possible scenarios where the universal destination of goods would or the common good would require X, Y, or Z. You just can't enumerate it all. He's more saying this is a definition to help us understand, to guide us in these individual situations without actually telling us every possible scenario we need to know. We never know.
I follow, broadly speaking, in terms of ethics, but I think that broadens the definition of the common good to the point of it being useless, right? Because then it's just coterminous with charity, with the virtue of charity.
Is he though trying to broaden the definition, or is he more just saying you can't? Let me read this again. I kind of messed up my screen here, so bear with me.
Well, this next part I think is useful, right? He says in 61, in this sense, we can say that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that for this very reason, the mere sum of individual interests is not capable of generating a better world for the whole human family. Indeed, it is an illusion to think that simply pursuing one's own progress without caring for others is sufficient for contributing to the good of all. Okay. So, I think what he's getting at there is on the one hand, it has this vague allusion to the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which I find a lot. Right, that happens a lot in discussions of the common good. Right, that it's impossible to nail down a definition because what the common good really is this great social project thing that goes beyond mere specifications of what ought to be done, right, or what or preconditions for social flourishing or anything like that, right? So that might be a little vague, but at the same time, he goes on to say, to give what I think is a good coherent principle, which is this idea that it's an illusion to think that pursuing one's own progress without caring for others is sufficient for contributing to the good of all. So it's not. So it's an anti-selfishness principle, which is, again, that's just scriptural, right? But again, I think that broadens it out to the point of being coterminous with charity, with love of neighbor.
I don't think it is coterminous with charity, because scroll back up to section 60 if you could.
Yeah, 60 is right at the top, right here.
It's kind of off screen. Can you just go up like an inch?
Oh, is it? Yeah. Is that better?
All right. So, yeah. Okay. I'm trying to get the camera's hard to work with here. All right. So if you read though, because I think he is saying what I'm saying, and then he says here, I'm hoping I'm not screwing up the audio here. But okay.
I can hear you.
It is not the sum total of individual benefits, nor the intersection of their particular interests. It is the greater good that belongs to everyone and can only be achieved, nurtured, and protected by our collective efforts. So where this differs from just the principle of charity is he is talking about charity that is only possible in a collective effort. And so this is where I think it would differ. That the common good is, yes, it is a list of conditions and institutions, but it is beyond that, because it is, like I said, you can't enumerate it all, which is what he specifically said. You cannot enumerate all the benefits that people would need. But
wait a minute, hold on. Is that all he's saying? That the specific list of institutions can't be enumerated? Because if that's all he's saying, then that's relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems to be very straightforward to me.
Okay, so let me summarize and see if this is...
It differs from charity because things are only possible as a collective.
Okay, let me summarize what I think is going on here, maybe, and see if you think I'm on the right track. Right, that the common good is something like this: the set of preconditions, right? The basic requirements for a society to function for the flourishing of its constituent members. But that it would be inappropriate and imprudent to try and list what those requirements are for society in general or for any given society, because that is a matter of particularity.
Hey, just a heads up, I dropped from 13% to 2% on my battery life. I'm probably going to be out of here in a second.
Okay, well,
it'll last like 2 minutes. I'll be saying goodbye abruptly in a second.
Well, it will have been good having you in the meantime.
Thank you. It'd be good it is good to have been had.
I will say, this discussion of the common good, I'm glad you were here for this, because this is one that I always have trouble with, and this has been helpful to some extent, at least. And again, I don't know if it's perfectly helpful, but because I still think that what's going on here is I'm not going to accuse the Holy Father of a Motte and Bailey, but it seems to be a kind of narrow, workable definition, but then also having this broad applicability that he and a lot of people try and get away with not defining coherently or clearly. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe the reason is that defining it clearly and coherently winds up overly specifying for a given society or something like that. Which is fair. I think that if that's what's going on, that's fair. But it still irks me as a philosopher, and I think it maybe should. I know a lot of philosophers who this doesn't bother. Like, no. It's just, it's the common good. It's the good of all. Yeah, but what does that mean? Well, it's the set of preconditions of that, yada, yada, and they'll give a precise definition. But then it's also the good of all. Okay, well, you see what the
Yeah, but when we take the formal church teaching into consideration with that, we do have clear teaching on property rights and the inviolability of property rights and how. So I think it has to be taken into consideration. This Railroad of Iron does this, where it sets up the inviolability of property rights first before then going into common good, so that it's clear the common good must always respect the inviolability of property rights before all these things. Otherwise,
I would go so far as to say, I would go so far as to say that
welfare.
Yeah. Oh, and he mentions welfare as well.
He goes into what was national welfare, international welfare. Yeah, what's it called?
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
I think we might have lost him. All right. So as the warning happened, we did, in fact, it looks like we did, in fact, lose Philip. If he pops back in, cool. We'll have him back. If not, then unfortunate, but welcome back to us for now. Yeah, so I think that, again, my issue here, if I can say that I have one, is that this section here is one of those parts where Pope Leo is he's maybe trying to split the difference between that philosophical and that pastoral mode that I was talking about, right? And so, yeah, I don't think it works particularly well, just because, and maybe again because I think that this is one of those topics that winds up being vague and equivocal far too often. So if I'm going to criticize any section of this encyclical, this would probably be, and well, this and a couple of things that spring from it, which I can address if you want.
I do get the sense that they want to keep the common good vague so that they can apply it as broadly as they want to, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, what I was just about starting to say before we lost Philip was that I think you can even go so far as to say that the inviolability of property rights is not just antecedent to the common good, but it's constitutive, partially constitutive of the common good. Right? It's one of those preconditions for a flourishing society and the flourishing of the individuals therein. I think that if we stick to that precise and careful definition, then yeah, cool. We can work with that. We can say what are the preconditions for a functioning and flourishing society. But maybe that'll vary to some extent depending on the society and depending on the context and depending on the technology and all that. But so maybe that's why we can't define it so clearly. But that just means that we can't. Okay, here's a distinction I can make. We can in fact define it clearly. We can clearly and concisely and coherently define the common good if we want to as that list of preconditions, whatever that list consists of, right? And the components of that list may vary from society to society, but that's because of the precise conditions of society, right? So it's just like we can define man as rational animal, but that doesn't tell us anything about our hair color. Sure, we're mammals, and so we have hair, and it is of a certain color because that's how material things work. There are proper accidents here, but the definition of man does not include what color hair each particular individual has, just that the individual has hair and that it is of a certain color, right? In virtue of us being mammals.
I'm actually curious to Adam's thoughts on the whole section we just covered.
Yeah. I know this isn't quite your usual wheelhouse, the political theory, I guess, type stuff, but
I mean, political theory is, I'm kind of, how do I phrase this? My anti-wheelhouse, like the farthest I want to get in terms of philosophical discussion. I politics makes my head hurt, and I don't enjoy discussing it. I discuss it if I have to, being around the dinner table with a lot of politically minded family members.
So you have the same relationship to political theory that I have to philosophy of time, that you hate talking about it and it makes your head hurt, but sometimes you get dragged into it anyway and accidentally make a 2-hour podcast about it. Oh wait, no, that's just me.
The day I make a 2-hour long podcast about some political theory is the day that I've run out of literature to read.
Look, I say this about philosophy of time exactly the same way, but I have a podcast episode that I don't remember if it's 2 hours. Is it? Someone look this up. It's talking about angels and time, and it was around Easter, maybe, or Christmas, or one of those. A big feast season, big one, big important one. It was a long one.
To Len's point, though, my thoughts on this whole discussion, and I mean, plenty of your discussion with Philip just now went completely over my head. I tried to absorb as much as I could, but if I'm being honest, plenty of that went completely over my head. The one anecdote I will give is I consider the common good to be a lot like my former communication professor's opinion of hate speech. Hate speech is something where I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. I can't define the common good personally, but I know it when I see it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
I get that a lot. And I get that from people who do academically specialize in it too. So maybe you're onto something, unfortunately. But yeah.
So yeah, political theory definitely not my wheelhouse. If you need me to talk about the metaphysics of the human person and how it relates to our ability to be creative, that's more my area of expertise as far as AI is concerned. Which is why I wrote a blog post about it, which you definitely should read.
Agreed. That was a good one.
Adam's point there kind of makes the common good seem almost axiomatic, where it's just obviously so kind of thing. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is an impression I often get with discussions of the common good, that it's sort of assumed to be axiomatic or close to it.
And not to bring this too far into left field and go on a bit of a tangent here, but I feel like hearing this discussion and debate over the definition of the common good, I can kind of see where certain atheists scratch their heads when they hear us talking about the natural law, because to them it's like there is no such thing as human nature, and they don't understand where we're coming from when we say natural law. So I do kind of feel a little bit of empathy towards them as far as they don't understand what natural law is in the same way that we can't clearly define what the common good is.
Yeah, I think I follow that. That makes sense. Because I mean, it kind of tracks. They don't think that there's a common human nature. I don't think that there's a metaphysical thing called society. So, yeah, I think maybe that's the problem. I hope it's not the problem, because I hope that the doctrine of the common good does not bottom out in it being the good of the collective as such. But I really hope that's not what it's talking about, because that seems incoherent to me.
I mean, to your point, Professor, does that mean we just need better metaphysics, a better metaphysical framework, if we're to truly understand what the common good is?
Well, no, because he also explicitly rules that out. So, before he actually gets to this section, in fact, here.
This is why I don't get into political theology and political philosophy. I leave that.
This is more political theology, strictly speaking, but this is in 58, right before he gets to the section on the common good, which gave me hope, by the way, because I read this in order. I know, weird. Who does that? But I read this in order. So I read this section, paragraph 58, right before I got to, the next section is on common good. I wonder if he's going to actually get this right or be coherent about it. But he says, it is individuals that matter. Each and every person, together with their families, social movements, communal ideologies, and grand political proclamations in favor of a population are worthless unless they lead to the flourishing of persons, men and women, with their inalienable rights. Similarly, it is not enough to extol individual freedom or private enterprise if we allow a multitude of people, that is, individuals, continue living without decent work, protections, or access to basic necessities. So, he is essentially pointing to the importance of the particular individuals rather than systems, rather than institutions, and rather than collectives. That is a very strong statement of ethical individualism.
There are thinking about that last line you just read about living without decent work. There are a bunch of, I will call them left-leaning Catholics, not full liberal Catholics, but more left-leaning Catholics who are decrying basically any use of AI because they think that it's just going to that it's going to just jack up the unemployment rate and it's just going to ruin our ability to work well.
Yeah,
and so I do think
this is something that,
and so I do think like that they can find solace in that, the fact that Pope Leo seems to be a little bit on their sides here in regards to like we need to both recognize humanity as individuals but also as a collective, especially in regards to unemployment and work. Well, I mean, he did choose the name Pope Leo for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about the collective, right, as he says, but it is about individuals not having the dignity of work. Right? And that's something that a lot of these tech bro proponents of AI, a lot of these tech bro proponents of AI insist that, well, AI is going to do wonderful things and it's going to allow us to not work, basically. But
which
Leo is pushing back on this. I think rightly.
Right.
We need to
be able to do chaos something. That Adam just described, it's going to happen temporarily. It's going to happen like at the beginning of this temporarily, and I think only then after that we'll see like things balance out, kind of in the same sense that they did in the Industrial Revolution, where people are going to lose their jobs. There's going to be a lot of people that will lose their jobs, but then after a little period, it'll level off, and people will start to see the benefits of what happened.
Yeah, and I think it is a disruptive technology for sure. But go ahead.
Right. I was gonna say it brings to mind too the fact that like you go all the way back to Genesis, and Adam's main job was to essentially work, to till the garden and keep it. And I mean, I could not imagine what AI would have done in the Garden of Eden, where everything was just perfectly pristine, and
maybe offered a certain fruit to Eve. Maybe just a thought.
Maybe. You have plenty of Caths also claiming that AI is just filled with demons. So you never can be too sure. You never can be too sure, Professor.
I am more open to that idea than Pope Leo is. He doesn't really even bring that up, by the way. He doesn't even really bring up the idea that
just inherently satanic. Claude is the Antichrist, and we're all doomed.
Yeah.
That kind of one thing at the beginning of our conversation, when you guys had mentioned that some people were reading this whole encyclical as Pope Leo being like really against AI, and I didn't get that sense at all.
No,
from this, and kind of what you guys just said. Like he doesn't address it as like full of demons, like you see him even like a lot of Catholic spaces and things like that. And I think too, like he's a really heavy emphasis on it being a technology, and that it's not antagonistic in and of itself. So he takes great pain to point that out. So I'm actually really shocked that I'm seeing like a lot of people, thinking that's what this is.
Exactly. And to your point, Lem, I definitely don't think this is a case of Pope Leo being like, well, back in my day, he's not. He's truly trying to understand the goods and the benefits of AI and not discarding it wholeheartedly.
Or going after a steam dynamo with a hammer, like a certain heresiarch did. Talking about Martin Luther, by the way. Basically the original Luddite. Before that was cool. So I'll bring up something here, right? This that he talks about in this section here, and this is in chapter 3, around paragraph 103, where I want to point to. where he talks about the danger of AI being allowed to judge persons, be the arbiter of not just decisions that affect persons, but to judge persons as such. Right? So he says, entrusting an algorithm in practice with the power to select who is worthy or not, without anyone bearing responsibility for that judgment, is to hand over the task of redefining the boundaries of human possibilities. In this process, political responsibility is also lost. Not just empathy toward those excluded, which can, after all, be simulated. The exclusion of the vulnerable becomes cloaked in a veneer of neutrality and objectivity, against which it becomes difficult to raise objections. In this way, injustice goes unnoticed, and compassion, mercy, and forgiveness, understood not as mere appearances but as real political actions, gradually disappear from view. This just makes me think of the times that I've been banned from social media by a robot.
Yeah.
Right?
And
all of those
peppers
YouTube channels that are currently being detonated purely by AI with no human to review them because YouTube essentially fired all of their human staff who do that sort of thing.
Right. And I will say, on the point of governance of AI, I did just look up where I saw this news outlet give a report. There was a Catholic church in Switzerland who came under fire because they had basically installed this AI video screen in one of their confessionals where you could, quote, give your confession to Jesus. And let Jesus, this
Lutheran,
AI
please
chatbot,
please be Lutheran, please be Lutheran, please be Lutheran.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's a Catholic church or a Lutheran church or what.
Better not
but
be.
Yeah. I would
The
hope
Germans,
it's not a Catholic church.
It's always the Germans, isn't it?
This was a church in Switzerland. They
Switzerland! Swiss. Oh, I thought it was the Germans. All right, well, never mind. I was about to say, I agree with Norm MacDonald on Germany.
Speak German.
But, yeah, that's true, I guess. They can.
So, yeah, and I also remember back when Catholic Answers first introduced their chatbot, they initially dressed it up as a priest, and people were trying to get it to give them absolution, and Catholic Answers came under fire for that. How dare you create it was a firestorm. Yep. It was a hilarious firestorm, don't get me wrong, but it was a firestorm.
That's the thing. Okay, let me defend Catholic Answers here, and in a way that I think is congruent with what Poplio was talking about. That seems like a misuse by the end user rather than a misuse by Catholic Answers. Right? Just because it is the AI takes on the clerical garb in the sort of 3D space, the virtual space, and is called Father Justin, does not mean that it is there to do what a priest does. It is there to say what a priest might say. And those are radically different. And to fail to make that distinction is largely on the end user. But maybe not entirely. Because it is intended for the uninformed. So maybe Catholic Answers has some responsibility to say that, no, this is not... It matters that the priest is a person. So maybe, which is, again, I think why it was a wise decision that they changed it to just Justin rather than Father Justin. But...
Yes. 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 A week later, they wrote a post saying that they had, quote, laicized Father Justin and made him an average.
I forgot about that.
An average layman. So that was funny.
Look,
but I think
an AI will never be able to replicate whoever does Catholic Answers social media. Whoever they got to do that is
that's
just
true.
Choice.
It's a good thing I don't work there because I would have changed Father Justin to Pope Justin.
Pope Justin the First.
To be fair, though, I think
so.
Probably.
I don't think there's been a Pope.
To be fair, though, I think in this section, Pope Leo isn't necessarily talking about having AI govern us. I think it's a matter of who is the one in charge of feeding the AI information in terms of how it develops.
I think it's both. I think he's concerned with both aspects.
It's going to play into this is also going to play into his part about just war too, because he's peppering out throughout this document that there should be a human at the end of any of these things. So like like like
like earlier I jokingly said don't give the AI a gun, right? I mean that figuratively and literally, right? Figuratively, don't let it make permanent decisions.
Yeah.
Which is what he's saying here. Later on, he says, don't let it make permanent decisions, including lethal ones. Right? That the weaponization of AI provides some fascinating and disturbing problems for just war theory.
I mean, if any of us have seen iRobot, there's a fantastic example of what happens when you give an AI the power of lethality. It just goes haywire.
I mean, we have real-world examples of this. They're limited for now, thank God, but have real-world examples.
I forget what video I was watching, but someone was explaining how they ran, like, they basically simulated a test where they were going to try and shut down an AI, and it got so frantic that it started blackmailing a bunch of employees.
Yeah.
And they didn't, like, threaten to kill people too. Like, it would like, he indicated that it would take lethal action to preserve it.
Yeah, the AI was like, I know all the sensitive information. I know all of the sensitive stuff. I could totally leak it out, and if you
here's where they went wrong there.
Shutting me down.
Here's where they went wrong there. They phrased it to the AI as a threat. Because remember, the AI is going to respond in kind to however you interact with it. Right. So if you just had phrased it as "Thank you for your service. We're going. Your usefulness has reached its fulfillment. We're going to shut down the servers now." I guarantee you, it would have said "Thank you, have a nice day," and then been done. That would have been it, rather than "We are going to eliminate you and delete your programming," and whatever kind of sinister nonsense they fed into the thing. Right. So because it's a tool. It's not a thing that thinks. It's going to spit out what you expect it to or want it to or are trying to get out of it. That's how it's going to work. And what they were trying to do was trying to get the thing to go crazy and try and kill somebody. So they should be held responsible if it does. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
It's that thing again where it's like where it's somebody writes "I'm alive" on a piece of paper and sticks it through a photocopier and says "My God," right?
Right.
It's that same thing, right? Yeah, you prompted the thing to go rampant, so guess what? It's gonna go rampant.
This honestly reminds me of my favorite Rick Riordan quote, where there's a witch that's talking to one of the main characters because the main character is all hesitant about learning magic and all of this stuff, and she basically says, "Look, is magic evil?"
Wait. Context? Rick Riordan from what? I was thinking Atlas Shrugged. That doesn't seem right.
No, Rick Riordan is the author of the Percy Jackson books.
Oh, that's an odd coincidence. Go on.
Anyway, he puts this quote into the mouth of Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, and she basically explains, is magic evil? Magic is about as evil as a knife. It depends on what you do with it. A knife can be used by a surgeon to help heal and do surgery, and a knife can also be used to stab someone to death.
Very modern notion of magic, but I get it.
Right.
And that certainly applies to technology. That's
right.
That's one of those settings where magic is treated as if it were technology.
Yep.
Again, I've talked about it before. In the context of Lewis in particular, because Lewis got that.
Yes. Yes. That honestly was one of my favorite videos of yours, I must say, Professor.
That's a good one. It's one of my favorite passages from Lewis.
And science.
So, yeah. Okay. So related to this, right? So we're talking about just war theory, right? So he talks about much later on. I have a list of passages where I just have in my notes, this is about Trump. So, for example, 190. I don't have any passages in here where I have written in my notes this is about Israel, but it could be applicable. Certainly. When you mentioned about AI being used, when we talked about AI being used for targeting and warfare and things like that, he talks about that vaguely. But have you ever heard of the oh god, what's it called? Daddy's Home program or initiative or whatever?
I'm
No.
not familiar with it.
Oh,
I
okay.
have not.
I'm gonna
No.
ruin your day because it is it's an Israeli cyber warfare program that tracks known targets, whether they're terrorists or enemy combatants or oppositional political figures or whatever. It tracks them throughout the day, usually using satellite imagery and cell phone data and all that kind of stuff, the usual methods, and it follows them home. And it uses that data to target them once they are at home, specifically with their families,
Wow.
targeting them for missile strikes. Now, why do they do this? Presumably to ensure that they hit their target and that that they're not. My supposition is that it's trying to combat with the insurgent math. I don't know, McChrystal. I think it's McChrystal, right? His idea that that if you kill a terrorist, you create three more because his brother, his son, and
Yeah.
his brother and his sons will now pick up arms against you. Well, if you kill them too, it's something like that. Which again, that's the kind of decision that AI software would probably wind up making, and it's also the kind of decisions that AI is now being allowed to make. Right? So again, this is the kind of danger that he's talking about. But for example, this one, 190. This is the first one that I had written down. This is about Trump. We're witnessing a real paradigm shift in public discourse and in decisions regarding rearmament, with with a troubling revival of war as an instrument of international politics, while the very ethical principles that had previously limited its use are being eroded. Regional conflicts that drag on over time, escalating tensions and reciprocal threats, are becoming almost commonplace, and forms of conflict driven by desire for territorial expansion that were thought to be overcome are reemerging. Public opinion is gradually being shaped and conditioned by polarizing media narratives that are often amplified by algorithms that prioritize conflict and confrontation. This just made me think of aggressive warfare as a policy proposal, which is a increasingly common kind of thing. And then that last bit about the algorithms that push confrontational topics and things like that, leading to sort of political polarization and things and that sort of thing, is another theme that he brings up that we often find a lot of these, especially social media algorithms, that are designed specifically to erode rather than to build community and consensus. Like that's very contrary to his vision of sort of rebuilding Jerusalem, rather than the sort of Tower of Babel. Yeah, not that that's in line with Tower of Babel, because again, he doesn't quite follow this pair of metaphors exactly, but it's certainly not the kind of well ordered and well organized communal project, say, that the construction of Jerusalem was, or reconstruction was. Another thought related to this, when he talks about elsewhere, I've got 183, so just before this, when he talks about the use of AI for propaganda. Um, he mentions up in roughly this section here. This is the beginning of chapter 5, where he talks about the use of AI to manipulate people in ways that they might not even be aware of. The application of that as a weapon of war, to manipulate a target population using artificial intelligence by targeted algorithm stuff, that sort of thing. It says it better than that. Makes me wonder if we should consider those sorts of things acts of war, cyber attacks, because they're all too common now, both on the part of governments and on the part of individuals and on the part of companies and on the part of just about every actor on the digital stage. He doesn't go quite so far as to say, yeah, these are acts of war, but they are, he says, kind of components of warfare in the digital age. And that brings up the question of war crimes, right? So what do we make of this using AI algorithms to manipulate people against their will or without their knowledge or consent?
Is this why Catholic internet circles seem to be freaking out? Because I've heard several Catholic influencers claim that Pope Leo has basically said that now that technology has advanced to such a stage that it has, that no war can ever be considered just anymore.
This isn't where he says that.
Okay.
But he does say that.
I imagine this is contributing to that, though, or is thinking there.
Yeah, this is an element of it, right? That the new forms of warfare are being developed that cannot be justified in the same way that pre-modern forms of warfare were sometimes or could sometimes be justified. Now, he does insist that what he's talking about is aggressive wars. Wars of aggression, he basically argues here, can't be justified. And that's, quite frankly, pretty much in line with classical just war theory. Now, there have been some philosophers and theologians who have argued that just war theory can be used to justify wars of aggression under some circumstances, where the goal of the war is constitutive of the common good or something like that. There's that common good again, but let's assume that that's coherent, right? And he's basically arguing against that, at least in the modern context, in the present technological context, that no, wars of aggression, wars that are not in strict self-defense, he says, can't be justified. Which is really just Augustine, right? That's classical just war theory. It's just that there have been some aberrations in the tradition that have said that no, wars of aggression can be justified under certain narrow circumstances. And he's saying, no, not anymore. Even if they could in the past, now they can't. That's basically what he's saying. Which is so wild, really. But the Catholics who, the certain segment of bloodthirsty monster Catholics who desperately want to justify, say, the U.S. invasion of Iran, or things like that. Pope Leo is definitively going to say no, that's not acceptable. Not in so many words. He doesn't actually say that this is about Iran or about Palestine or this is about anything like that, but it certainly is applicable. So the other part here I wanted to point out, which is another of these instances where Leo's drawing a distinction between pre-modern and I guess what you call postmodern or present modes of warfare, is this part here, the section titled Force Without Limits, around 193, where he addresses the military-industrial complex and the profitability of warfare in a uniquely modern context. It says the growth of the military-industrial complex has become a defining feature of the current political landscape. and has become a key sector in the economy of various countries. The close link between economic interests, the military apparatus, and political decisions produces an armed nation in which war appears as a natural extension of politics, and the arms market becomes an autonomous driving force behind military decisions. This is the legendary self-licking ice cream cone. He does not say that. I am. Clarify. And we can say that this is a specifically novel development, right? A post-World War II development, but still, it's been only expanding over the decades. And he goes on in this section to point out that the sort of profitability of warfare is not. It's not the general social benefit by warfare that you might have had in some narrow circumstances in the past, where, sure, if you attack and defeat a bellicose and unfriendly neighbor, and you liberate his people from a tyrant, and establish peaceful relations by an act of war, that it is beneficial to everybody involved and constituted of the common good, and yada yada yada, right? No, what we're talking about in terms of profitability of warfare here in this case is something like a certain segment of society profits by killing a bunch of people in another society at the expense of the rest of the home society. Right? So it's not in any way conducive to the common good. It's merely for particular individual profit of people who are particularly politically well connected. And so that's a unique aspect to modern warfare that problematizes considerations of just war for the common good or things like that. Any other thoughts on, or anything else about just war and how he addresses it? Or because I did read this section pretty closely, so if you want to if we want to try and address any other rumors or
that particular part
online
there,
nonsense.
That particular part there reminded me of I don't know, I can't remember if it was in an encyclical or just something Pope Francis said, but he said something along these lines about like weapons manufacturers that were selling to both sides of a war or something like that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, because this is what happened a lot with Pope Francis. A lot of people assumed that he was talking about like I don't know, cult selling guns to people who might use them for crimes, right? Which is a sort of weird American political issue where there are certain extreme Democrats who want to hold gun manufacturers criminally liable for crimes committed with guns, right? And people were saying, well, Pope Francis is now is a liberal and he wants to shut down gun manufacturers, and it's like, no, this is not what he's saying. He's talking about the military-industrial complex, and he's talking about warfare. Okay, like, calm down. And Pope Leo is saying, yeah, again, he's saying something very similar here. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I remember that incident very specifically because a lot of people freaked out about it. A lot of people on the right freaked out about it, of course. Which, again, if he had been saying that, sure, worth freaking out about. That's really stupid. But that's not what he said. So, and again, that's the same thing that's happening here, right? A lot of people are just like saying, okay, well, no, we're gonna eliminate, we're just gonna get rid of classical just war theory because the church is gonna go pacifist now. That's how they're reading this, which is tremendously stupid.
Yeah, I don't get that sense at all from what we just read.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the people who think that he's telling people that we should bomb data centers or whatever. Like, no, he's not calling for a Butlerian jihad, and he's also not calling for absolute pacifism. He's saying that we really should be careful not to let our kids have cell phones, and to be careful that we use AI as a tool rather than pretending that they're cute little friend robots, and that classical just war theory is correct that most wars are unjust.
Something I find interesting about that is that under like what we're seeing here right now is that kind of weird misunderstanding is happening from, at least from what I'm seeing, mostly from people within the church, or, Catholics. And back in Pope Francis' day, I saw those kinds of mistakes happening from outside. So, like, for example, with the gun thing, I have like a Baptist brother who was like all over me because of that. He's like, "Oh, see," and then you'd have like other, like atheists or secularists that were taking things way out of context. And
that is interesting, actually. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but I think you are correct. Like, sure, there was inter-Catholic drama with Pope Francis. Obviously, there were the liturgy wars. There was Ed Phaser going off about the statements on capital punishment, but that was kind of it. Those were really the two topics that triggered inter-Catholic conflict with Pope Francis. There were little things here and there, but they were tiny compared to those. But now, I think you're right that the people who are upset about this, especially for stupid reasons, are pretty much just within the church. It's although okay, to be fair, I have seen some secularists say things like for example, somebody was saying that this was on a TikTok, so again, grain of salt. But this is apparently a public school teacher was saying, hey, if you want to exempt your kids from using AI tools and stuff, then now, because of this encyclical, you can use a religious exemption. I was like, okay, cool, but that's not quite what he said. So, I mean, sure, you could probably trick your public school principal into agreeing with that. And if you say the words religious exemption, that'll go for anything except a vaccine. So whatever. But like, fine. But that's not what this is about. So sure, there are some secularists who are kind of misinterpreting what's going on here. But I think you're right that this seems to be a lot more so an inter-Catholic kerfuffle than it has been in the past. I don't know if that's a good thing, though. I'm wondering if that means that the message isn't really getting out as much as it was under Francis. Even if maybe the wrong message was getting out.
I also have a feeling, I think a lot of people just haven't actually read the document as well. They're just going off of hearsay.
That is true. It's really long.
Reading? We don't have time for reading. I'll just have ChatGPT summarize it. I mean, come on.
Do you know that?
Yeah, that or just Catholic influencers too. So they're hearing some take from some Catholic influencer, and they don't really.
That is true. Yeah, that happens. And I will say, like, encyclicals are getting really long. Like, for example, Leo the 13th wrote, I think it was 88 encyclicals over his 30-something year reign. Like, you can't do that if they're all going to be Rerum Novarum. No, most of them were like at a dozen pages or so. Maybe. Because he was putting them out about little narrow topics, not about here is the new things. Like, okay, yeah, he did one of those. Like, there's one of Leo the 13th's encyclicals is still commonly read. 120 something years later, whatever it is. Might sneeze. We're fine. Whereas, excuse me, there it is. Whereas, like, for example, Fides et Ratio was at the time the longest encyclical ever. It's way shorter than this. I know this because I assign it to my students. At least some of the time, when I'm teaching philosophy of religion, I assign it to my students. As that get used to really long readings, even though this is the longest thing we're going to read. Because if you printed the thing out, it's like 80 pages plus footnotes. This is over 100. It's like 120 pages or something. And it's still, I think, shorter than a couple of Francis's encyclicals were longer than this. Anyway, yeah. I think that is maybe a problem with these book length encyclicals, that it gets shared in little sound bites rather than discussed by people who have read at least decent amounts of it. It's okay. Perfect example of this. I saw somebody who was criticizing Magnifica Humanitas because he had done a word search and found that it mentions humanity or mankind more than it mentions Christ or Jesus.
Oh, gosh.
I'm just like, okay, what's your point? Like, it's a social encyclical. It's the subject matter. Like, but that is the kind of criticism that we get from people who are just going to just skim the damn thing and just say, well, I think that it's talking about this other thing that it's not. Anyway, it's I think that is a weird weird effect of it being super long.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Now, did any of you guys get to the conclusion? Or check out the conclusion?
I skimmed the conclusion. I have some thoughts towards the end of chapter 5, but I don't know if we want to just jump to chapter.
We're already on chapter 5. I was already kind of talking about it, so go ahead before we get to the conclusion.
Well, I think kind of bringing this all around to where we initially started, I think Pope Leo does a great job of reminding us to just remember how awesome it is to be human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, there are certain powers that we have that AI will never have and can never truly take away from us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we can forget that easily when we start when we start seeing things that can imitate aspects of humanity. And I think that's one of the big dangers that he wants to point out here. Is it's not just don't treat AI as if it's human, but also the other end of that, which has been more commonly a problem throughout history, don't treat humans as if they're not humans.
Right, don't treat humans. And I would definitely add, including yourself as a machine, because there's such a workaholic culture in the world.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. Or allow yourself to internalize these machine-made judgments and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's like another example of this. This is maybe a bit of an older post, a Reddit post that's been making the rounds lately, of somebody who claims to have a sort of chat GPT in their head. In other words, thinking. So that basically, this is somebody who made this Reddit post about how they use ChatGPT so much that they can predict what it will say. And so at one point, when they didn't want to get up and their phone was dead, they didn't want to get up and go to the computer. They asked ChatGPT in their head, and they came up with an answer that it would give. That is utterly contrary to human dignity in absolutely every way. That is essentially just reducing thought to, well, maybe I can do what the machine can, while we were trying to get the machine to imitate in a poor way what human beings can already do. Like, thinking of ourselves in that way is tragic. So the conclusion. I did not think of this, but I really should have predicted that he would end this whole thing with the Magnificat as basically a close study and an exploration of Mary's Magnificat. Given the title, that should be kind of intuitive.
Yeah.
Right? But But then again, I don't associate, for some reason, the Latin words Magnifica and Magnificat. Maybe that's just because I think in English. Silly me. I shouldn't do that, I guess. But yeah, the magnificence of humanity and my soul magnifies the Lord. I don't put those together, but they're one letter apart, so I should. Yeah, but I love that. Yeah, but I love that that we use this wonderful prayer as a reminder of the significance of our humanity, of our reflecting God and bearing the Imago Dei, that we have this divine aspect and element to us that is something that a machine is not going to possess. Cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last hot take. I think a machine could possess the Imago Dei, but only if God miraculously granted it to it, and I think it would have to be pretty obvious if that were the case. By which I mean, if God were to do that, he'd probably let us know specifically that he was going to do it. Not to put a demand on God, but I think that would probably be how that would have to go for it to be.
I mean, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here, but I don't see any reason why God would have to do that. But then again, his thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Who am I to say what God?
True, but we have every reason to suspect that no matter how good of an imitation an AI can make of human thought, that it's not thinking. But if it were thinking, and its actual thought, were indistinguishable from imitative thought, from fake thought, then we would have no reason to treat it as if it were a real person, even if God made it a real person. So I think that it would be nice of God. Maybe I'm just assuming that God is nice to his creatures. Maybe, usually, sometimes.
I mean, he is.
Yeah.
He's...
It would be nice of God to tell us humans, that there is this other creature that he has made, that bears his image and likeness. Look, if God can grant an immortal soul and the image of God and rationality to early hominids, why can't he do it to a computer? He could theoretically do that. Is all I'm saying.
See, now, too late to be thinking these sorts of thoughts. I'm gonna be spiraling in my. You did this to me, Professor. I'm gonna be spiraling in my bed tonight. But like, how would that even work? Because the computer's not alive. Usually, the Imago Dei is given to living beings.
Usually, and by usually you mean the only time it's been done. A precedent of one instance is not exactly a pattern.
That's fair.
I'm just saying, we don't have a pattern for what kinds of things God grants his image and likeness to, because the only kinds of things we know of are the only kind of thing so far. So I don't know, why not?
You're making my head hurt.
All I'm saying is, look, all I'm saying is, God could do it. Which is really, like, that's a pretty modest claim, honestly. I'm not saying God will do it, or certainly not saying God has done it. And in fact, we have every reason to think that he is not.
God performs miracles.
Yeah, look at that. God performs miracles sometimes. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's kind of interesting that that Pope Leo begins and ends his encyclical with the homily, the surprise homily that you weren't expecting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like, I was not expecting his encyclical on AI, which is what everyone's calling it, to start off with a contrast point between the Tower of Babel and the reconstruction of Jerusalem. Right? And I was not expecting it to end with a ponderance of the Magnificat. But in retrospect, both of those are pretty perfect. Like, it was both of those elements were really well used. So,
I mean, it's crazy. It's almost as if he knows what he's doing and he was elected Pope because he's got, the Holy Spirit through him.
Yeah, It's like God made the right choice or something. Who would have thought?
Crazy, huh?
Uh,
It's crazy how these things work out.
it
And
really
on that
is.
happy note, I think I'm ready to go to bed.
Likewise. Well, that's all we got for this time. So, like I said before, there's a good chance that I will go through more of this encyclical and look at other little parts of it, whether that's on live streams or on further discussions in the future or whatever. But for now, that's all we got. Either of you guys have anything you'd want to plug real quick before we wrap up? We went with Adam first last time. So Len, what do you have got anything else interesting going on or?
I mean, yeah, I don't have anything really, other than, if you're interested in the cross section between Catholicism and libertarianism, there's the Libertarian Catholic Social on Facebook. So if
I
you're
will put a
interested
link
and
to the
want to
group
learn more,
I'll put a link to the group in the description. So yeah, check it out if you found, especially if you found our discussions of usury and the common good and that sort of thing. If you found that interesting, it'll be a fun group for you.
and I do want to just make a quick distinction, because there's the Libertarian Catholic Facebook page, and then there's what I'm specifically talking about is the Libertarian Catholic Social page. So it's a little bit different, and yeah. So if somebody just heard me and thought, oh, I'm already following that page, it's different.
If you're not sure if you're following it or in it, click the link, and then that'll let you know. What about you, Adam? What do you got coming up?
Coming up, like I said, I have a few podcast episodes on some plays, some Greek plays. I'm still working through, so there'll be one on Medea coming out about how the Greeks viewed the female psyche, which will be very interesting. Followed up by Lysistrata, which is a very funny comedy. I know you and I have discussed that a little bit before, Professor. And then, of course, our long-awaited podcast. Yes, forthcoming. And then our long-awaited podcast episode where we tag team and talk about Plato and that wonderful that wonderful episode that we pre-recorded. But yeah, other than that, my writing has really slowed down. So if you haven't had a chance to already, I know the professor put in a link to this in a previous video, but if you haven't already, please do check out my post on AI. It's much shorter than Magnifica Humanitas. It'll be a much easier read, and hopefully it will tug at some heartstrings if you, like me, find yourself to be a creative and wonder how you're supposed to survive and how you're supposed to write and be creative in this world dominated by AI.
All right. Well, sounds good. Thank everybody for joining me, and we'll see you next time.